this is Andre. We're going to look at setting up MIDI control from scratch for 5 different looping devices. In the previous video, we looked at 2 basic types of MIDI messages, note commands and continuous controller commands. In this video, we're going to use those 2 types of commands to set up MIDI control for the Blooper, Zoia, Microcosm, and Looperlative LP2 and LP1. For each device we look at, there are 2 parts. First, we'll set up basic record and overdub functionality from scratch, using the specific continuous controller values that each looper has assigned to its various functions. After that, we take a quick peek at what we're going to call expanded functionality. This involves using MIDI to make a looper do things that would be difficult or impossible to do without MIDI. Now that's a very big subject, and depending on the functions we're talking about, there may be very little overlap from one looping device to another. But the basic principle is the same, using 1 or 2 types of MIDI messages to get a wide range of functions out of several different devices. In this video, we're going to focus on the Arturia Beatstep as our MIDI controller. There's a couple of reasons for this. It's got a good amount of flexibility without being either prohibitively limited or dizzyingly complicated to configure. It also has an excellent software editor, which makes it very easy to see exactly what kinds of messages are being sent and how slight adjustments to those messages can change the way a device behaves. Now, depending on the way we want to use this stuff, something like the Beatstep may or may not be a good choice for any particular player. But part of the point of these videos is to show how we're dealing with the same small number of MIDI commands and parameters, no matter what controller or looper we're using. The more we understand those core principles, the easier it will be to apply that understanding to a wide range of controllers and devices. So we will be comparing different types of MIDI controllers very soon, but for the time being, we're using the Beatstep alone for ease of programming and demonstration. Alright, we're going to start with the Beatstep sending MIDI to the Blooper via the Zoia. We're using the Zoia because the Blooper needs to see MIDI signals coming from a powered MIDI source. Sending MIDI directly from the Beatstep does not do that, but using the Zoia as a MIDI through box does successfully transmit MIDI to the Blooper. Right now, we're not transmitting anything because this is an empty bank in the Beatstep because we're going to build this up from scratch. So let's say we want button number 1 to be our record function. So we come over to the MIDI control center, select button number 1. We are going to switch to control. We're going to go to MIDI channel 2 because that's the channel we have the Blooper set to. Record is continuous controller number 1 for the Blooper. And I'm going to change the global MIDI channel to channel 2 just to keep things kosher. So now if we hit that button, now we have a record. Now, right now, if I hit it again, it's not going to do anything because if you keep pressing record, it isn't going to go into overdub or anything. It's just going to keep doing record. You can change the on and off values here, but that isn't really going to change anything. So that means we need to add an overdub and a play button. So let's do that. Button 2, let's have that be the play button. Switch control, channel 2. Play is continuous controller number 2 for the Blooper. So we're setting that to number 2. So now record. There we go. All right. I'm going to turn that off for a second. Let's add an overdub button. Let's have that be button 3. So once again, switch control. Global channel no, MIDI channel 2 yes, and overdub is continuous controller number 3 as far as the Blooper is concerned. So now, if we play, and now let's see if we have an overdub. Yes, we do. Now you'll see if I push the overdub button again, it stays in overdub. And again, that doesn't matter what we have the on or off value set to. So in order to change that, what we need to do is go back and forth between play and overdub like that. And if you keep hammering around the play button, you can re-trigger it. But to go back and forth between play and overdub using separate continuous controller commands, you need to have 2 separate things. There is a workaround. I'm going to erase this because it's bugging me. There is a multi-control option that the Blooper has, which is continuous controller number 11, and that will send different function commands depending on what the value of CC number 11 is. So let's select the 4th pad, switch control, global no, MIDI channel 2 yes, we want controller number 11. So right now we are going to set all the values for controller 11 to 1. That gives us a record. And again, it'll only give us a record right now. So I'm going to come out of record. There we go. Now, one of the nice things about the Beatstep, and one of the reasons we're using that to demonstrate this stuff, is specifically because you can send different values on the on and off of the button. So right now, we're sending the record function on both of those. What we can also do is have the on set to overdub, and the off value, I should say, and the on value set to play. So now if we record something, and now we're toggling between play and overdub. Now the reason it's only doing that as long as I hold it down is because right now we have that pad set to momentary behavior, which is gate in Beatstep terminology. So if we change it to toggle, now it'll stay until we push it again. And then we can toggle back and forth just on one button. We could also reverse it. We could have the off value be 2 and the on value be 3. Basically the same kind of thing. Here's a cool little Easter egg I found as well. If you have multi-control set up, right now we're toggling between play and overdub. There's no loop in the blooper. No loop in the blooper. But if I push that, it initially acts as a record function. And now we're toggling between overdubbing and playing. So you can basically get all the functionality that you would have out of this switch out of one MIDI pad. The reason we can do that with this is because you can send different values on the on and off on the Beatstep. Not every MIDI controller can do that, so if that were the case, then you would need to have a different dedicated button for each different function that you wanted to trigger. Alright, now this bank is designed for some kind of special functionality. Right now, modifier A is set to this Vari-Speed thing. And this particular bank has been specifically designed to work with this particular modifier. So you can hear as we scroll through, you get octaves and fifths, and then when you go left counterclockwise past 12 o'clock, you get octaves and fifths in reverse. So this bank is basically sending out specific values for the modifier A continuous controller so that we can do this. So this is the loop at regular pitch forward, that's reversed. If we wanted an octave down, there we go. If we wanted an octave down reversed, so we have different values assigned to each of these pads. So instead of having to scroll through the knob and find the pitch we want, we can just jump directly to any pitch. So I want regular pitch backwards. I want an octave down forwards. I want really, really low. I want really high forwards. Really high backwards. So now we're using the Zoia as a dedicated looping device. I have a looping patch programmed in here. Recording, overdubbing, playing, reversing, all kinds of goodness. There's a couple of different ways you can assign continuous controllers to different Zoia parameters and functions. What we're going to do is create a new module, because the Zoia is a modular environment. It's an interface module, and we want it to be a MIDI CC in. What we're doing now is configuring it so that it will specifically respond to continuous controller number 1. So I've made that continuous controller 1. Now we're done. So right now, these pads are just the blank stock default setting for the Beatstep. So let's turn this first pad into switched control. Let's have it be controller number 1. I'm going to switch from gate to toggle for reasons that will become clear eventually. And now, nothing happens. That's because there's one other thing we have to do. We have to connect this CC in module to the record module. And you do that by holding that down, and making a connection. Reset. And now, there we go. Now we're in overdub. Now we're in play. And I will open it up there. So overdub, play. Now, one of the aspects about this particular patch is that it responds to MIDI note information unless you play the pitch of the loop melodically. Now, it so happens that when you open up a default patch on the Beatstep, the default is that the pads send out different notes. So we are going to turn on Vari-Speed. Now, these are all pretty low, so let's get something a little higher. We're going to go to pad 9, and right now that's sending out C1. Let's have it send out C3. There we go, and that should correspond to the original pitch of the loop. So, and then if we open up the pitch parameter on the Zoia looper, now you can see that's the original pitch, and now it's displaying the pitch change as percentages. I believe you can also display it, yeah. So now we're in half steps. Alright, now we have the microcosm setup. We are in looper only mode. If we record, now we go into play. Nothing gets overdubbed because we're in play. Click it again now. Now we're overdubbing, etc. Alright, let's get those assigned to MIDI. This is another empty blank bank on the Beatstep. Alright, pad number 1 is going to be record, so that needs to be switched control. And for the microcosm, oh good grief. For the microcosm, record is going to be continuous controller 28. So switch control CC28. I'm going to set this to toggle because weird stuff happens with the microcosm sometimes if these are not set to toggle. Number 2 is going to be play. So that'll be CC29. Number 3 is going to be overdub, which is 30. All right, let's see what we have here. There's our play. There's our overdub. All right. So let's sit with that loop for a second. I am going to go back to the MIDI control center. I'm going to load a patch that I made a while back. So now this page gives us Vari-Speed control. Now you can access Vari-Speed through the onboard interface by holding down the blinking button and then sliding around. So center, 12 o'clock is original pitch, half speed, quarter speed, 2 times, 4 times speed. What's nice about doing it through MIDI is that you can jump to any of those. So let's say I want it to be 1/4 speed. Let's say I want it to be 4 times speed. Let's say I want it to be half speed. Regular. Etc. What I've also done on this bank is I've added in some extra musical intervals. These are being set on a different CC value. There's one continuous controller command that does stepped pitch. If I want to be really precise, it is looper playback stepped. And there's a separate continuous controller for looper playback speed that is not stepped. In other words, it's not quantized. And not every CC value will give you something workable, but some of them will. So these are the 5 standard Vari-Speed controls. And then in here, we have some other musical intervals. Alright, we have the LP2 Looperlative mini looper. So onboard controls record, overdub, and play. No overdub. So stop, erase. So the LP2 actually uses note commands for a lot of its functions. It does do continuous controller commands for things that happen across a range, but for on-off type commands, it actually uses note commands. So we're coming down to button number 1, and it's going to be C-2. So we're going to record. Now we're overdubbing. Now we're playing. And what's nice about that MIDI command is that it duplicates this button's functionality completely. So if you have no loop, let's erase that. If you have no loop and you press it, then you start recording, press it again, overdubbing, and then once you've got something as a loop, then it toggles between overdubbing and playback. Blinking is overdubbing, unblinking is just playback. The LP2 can do 4 different simultaneous loops, so I'm going to have 9, 10, and 11, and 12 be set up for loops 1, 2, 3, and 4. So number 9 has to be D sharp minus 2. Number 10 is going to be E minus 2. 11 is going to be F minus 2. 12 is going to be F sharp minus 2. And number 2 is going to be a command called play or stop now. And that is going to be note number C3. So let's record a new loop and then I will explain all this stuff. So here's a new loop. Amazing. Not really amazing. All right, so play stop will immediately play or stop whatever loop is selected. Right now we just have one loop. So I am going to stop playing loop number 1. We're going to select loop 2. Start recording. So overdub on loop 2. And let's close overdub. Now let's go back to loop 1 and let's play that. There it is. Let's select loop 3. Gonna start recording on loop 3. Let's stop loops 1 and 2. So loop 2, stop. Loop 1, stop. So this is just loop 3 now. Turn off overdub. Now we're just in play, so none of that is getting added in, and let's record something on loop 4. And you can hear it's a little out of sync, which is deliberate. There are ways to get multiple loops synchronized together on the LP2, but I'm not doing that. All right, so select track 4, stop and play, select track 3, stop, track 4. All right, so now none of the tracks are playing. This is track 1. This is track 2, track 3, track 4. Track 4 and 2, track 2, 4, and 3, and track 1. So now all 4 tracks are playing at the same time. Alright, and finally with the LP1, I'm kind of cheating because this is the same bank that we just set up for the LP2. You have more flexibility with what you want to have trigger what functions with the LP1. I have chosen to have the functions be exactly the same for the LP2 and the LP1 just because they're based off the same looping engine and I like being able to switch out my controller for either one. So we still have these selecting tracks 1, 2, 3, and 4. Going to select track 1, going to record something. Close overdub, select track 2, and record something there. That's much shorter and out of sync. Close overdub. Now, what we also have here, and I set this up off camera because it was a little involved, these knobs control pan positions for loops 1 through 4. So now this moves loop 1 all the way over there. That moves loop 2 all the way over there. Let's select loop 3. Let's record something new on there. And we're just going to keep that as the baseline. And we'll select track 4. And let's find out. Recording on track 4. Close Overdub. So now we can put the bass over there. And the percussion can be over there. And the top row is volume. So these are volume faders for tracks 1, 2, 3, and 4. So right now we're only hearing the percussion on track 4. Bring that around. There we go. So now it's panned more center. Let's bring the bass back in. Come on, bass. There you are. Bring back in track 2. Pan it somewhere else. And track 1.